I think we'll start this one over, simply because I don't have a simple order that any of these would really go into, but the main ability would be kind of similar to something that already exists, and it would be an Exalted Blade style weapon for the frame. An ice sword that has a chance of, and this is where it gets very frosty, freezing an enemy. Then there could be, the problem is, because we have freeze, ice, snow and avalanche over here, abilities that use similar kind of things will be very hard to do. But an Exalted Blade that is literally made of ice, that has a chance of doing everything that freeze can do. They could even go as far as a ground pound shoots an ice wave out the end of it. I mean, if you think about it, Excalibur's Exalted Blade has a chance of, well, it does do. Where are you? Radial Javelin if you hit the ground. Or is it Radial Blind if you slide attack? Yeah. But it wouldn't shoot blades out like that. It would just become like every other Exalted weapon to every other frame. It would turn into a melee only type thing that has a chance of freezing enemies. Exalted Ice Blade would be, well, if it was an ice based frame, that would be great. And I've thought about that for the longest of times. But then we're going to get into some weird abilities, which is where Gora came into it. Blood Altar. Similar kind of thing, where the ice comes out of the ground. Technically, it's not just her that does it. Frost also has this for, is it Avalanche? Yeah, the spikes come out of the ground around you as you cast the ability, but not in the same kind of way. It would be more similar to something like Blood Altar, but it doesn't bleed the enemies and heal allies around you. It could be something as silly or as easy as it adds armor to allies, because as we know, you have the ability to cast armor on allies with certain frames, so it could be something similar to Blood Altar. The ice comes out of the ground, grabs the enemy, and it gives armor to people around it because the ice forms on people around you. Or that could be a whole ability all in itself. Trying to think of one that's anywhere near this. There is one frame that used to have a chance of doing things like that, but yeah, they changed the passive to deal extra damage. And there is a frame that does similar kind of things, and this is where the kind of stupidity comes from here with this idea. Cold at the bottom adds armor. Another weird ability that I thought of for a ice-based frame is, sadly, based on Ice Wave. It shoots ice out in front of it, and I keep thinking there was a way of making that better as well, and technically this is where Ureli's existence kind of played into it. Yeah, let's just ignore that, shall we? It exists, but it would be a wave of ice, and you surf on it as it's going. So it would be like Ice Wave and Tidal Surge, but you riding on top of it like Ureli does on her surfboard. I kind of seen that one, and ever since Hydroid arrived, I've thought about it a lot, because, well, you could very easily, actually, if I go to abilities and we click on it, is it going to make it bigger? No. That's a bit of a shame. But yeah, that's another ability that it could have. Another ice-based frame would be great. But, well, sadly, it needs something defensive. Yes, this is basically, it's not ripping off other frames' abilities, but, well, there's other frames that have similar abilities, and it's really hard to show abilities for a frame that doesn't exist when the abilities don't exist. And it's not like they have ever done this before, is it? Nope. They've never done this before whatsoever. Nope. Not once, not ever. Ah, that ability was so useful for so long. It still is. I have not played Nova in way too long. But, oh, look, that's similar to Molecular Prime, but it's defensive based. And my instant thought was something along the same kind of lines, but at the same time, not. Because, well, that's Gora. Which is where my ideas for defensive abilities ran dry for quite a while. I mean, come on. Gora has so many defensive abilities, it is kind of silly at times. And yes, for those who kept mentioning it, I know that you can use Shattered Lash to kind of puncture the Mass Vitrify. And I know I did it a few times. But that's got nothing to do with its defensive ability against enemies, so my original thought was something like an ice wall would be great, but there is a certain game that has somebody who puts up a ice wall that, well, legally I'm not allowed to mention. So a lot of people will understand what it is, few people know why, but yeah, ice wall would be defensive, but it already exists in another game, and well, everyone's just going to turn around and say, oh, they're just copying other games again. Not like any other game has ever ripped off abilities from Warframe. Destiny was better when that was supposed to be a moving thing. Yes, that's right, if you didn't know, the bubble that the Titan puts up in Destiny was originally supposed to stay on the Guardian. As you ran around, it went with you, and then they made it stationary. Almost like some other frame. Oh, sorry, some other game. And I have no idea what game that could be. And then it came to me. Weirdly enough, while I'm sorry, I'm going to have to do this because, oh, that did not work at all, did it? Damn wings. Well, yeah. It came to me while standing outside, and I basically locked myself out, and it started to rain heavily. In the middle of winter. You can guess exactly where this is going, can't you? It's not as much as a defensive ability as, well, they could literally make an ability where the rain falls, so it's an AoE based thing, and let's say the same kind of radius as this ring. Any enemies who come into contact with the rain freeze. Just like they do with Gora's ice wall, as it goes past them, it slows them down and then they come to a stop and they're kind of covered in glass. Similar kind of thing, but covered in ice. So it would be an ice rain style ability. It's not really defensive in the way of an ice wall, and I cannot remember that one I used was the ice wall of 1862. Do not ask me anything else past that. I do not know. That was just what the image was called. But it would still be defensive because if they made it just like World on Fire used to be for Ember, where it just keeps going. Just like this. If I quickly make my frame sit down so it's out of the way. So any enemies that come within range of it get frozen. Obviously, the higher the level they are, the longer it takes for them to freeze, the higher the chances they can get to the target. So it's not just going to stop them outright, but it has a chance to stop them. And obviously, increasing the strength of it could make it freeze them quicker. But it would still be a good defensive ability, and it would still be based around ice. Because there's really only one ice-based frame. When it comes to looks of the frame, it has to have the same kind of luminous, it would be ice this time, not glass, as Gora Prime has, because this stuff looks amazing. Remind me of that Glow Woo or whatever it was called from Destiny, the colour palette type thing you could put on your armour. I love that stuff, but oh, it reminds me so much of that. When that stuff first came out, when it actually looked good before they nerfed it through the floor, because it used to actually kind of glow. That's what this reminds me of, and that's one of the main reasons I decided, you know what, it's time to kind of do this video, because honestly, the only other thing I could think of ability wise would be something kind of similar to Ice Fist. where you would cast an ability, and this is why I didn't mention it prior, because obviously it would counter the whole ice sword, and an exalted ice sword would look so much better than exalted ice fists. Though it could be that or the blades. Really doesn't matter, just an exalted ice based weapon. The sword is because it kind of already exists, but an exalted ice fist where it's just spikes like the Furex, or, well, that doesn't count. Yeah, could be just like the Haruda and have spikes of ice coming off it. So the exalted weapon could literally be anything. I really do prefer the idea of a sword, but fists would work just as well. Correct me on this one, I could be massively wrong. There isn't really an exalted punching weapon. Well, straight away I know for a fact that's a lie. Wait, where is she? That's not right. Yeah, that exists. I completely forgot about that. Though technically, that's not a punching weapon, they are claws. I literally mean punching weapon, not claws. It even says deadly claws. So, yes, it does exist, but it could be ice all over the hands and you just run around, and it could even have parts of paralyze in there. And because I know somebody's going to mention it, obviously the ability called Thaw that turns you into a puddle, yeah, that would be straight up ripping off Undertow. Unless you then used it to move around and the mobility became a lot better, in which case, well, you're just kind of ripping off something else there, aren't you? It's kind of a combination between Cloudwalker and Undertow. And there's that weird noise from the other side of the room that happened on Friday. Anyway, I think we'd better leave this off here, because this is going to be completely weird. And I mean, come on, even he has the same kind of luminous type stuff, but that is purely energy. Gora's is just really nice, which is why I think that, but ice would look so good on whatever this frame would actually look like. But again, nothing more than a stupid bunch of ideas based around nothing other than playing Frost for many, many years and thinking what I would like to see them replace his first two abilities with, because I just don't use Freeze or Ice Wave. Never really have. But with that, I think we'll leave this off here. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.